Chapter 2 from the book The One That Got Away by Priyanka Menon. The hot shower felt absolutely divine. Despite the heat and humidity outside, Shamita had always preferred her bath water to be hot. She stepped out of the bathroom into a white robe with lavender flowers on it. Her curls were wrapped in a towel, turban style. She was standing in front of her open suitcase, contemplating on what to wear when there was a knock on her door. "Who is it?" "Shamita, open the door," came Geet's voice. Shamita didn't think twice, went to the door and wrenched it open. Big mistake. Geet stood there, that evil little thing, grinning from ear to ear, and right behind her was Jai, wearing a pair of white linen pants, a blue polo t-shirt, and wicker moccasins. He slid his Ray-Ban aviators into the pocket of his t-shirt. You could always count on him to make a surprising entry. Shamita stood frozen. 12 years had passed since the last time she had seen her best friend. 12 years on, and Jai still looked the same. Granted, he had started to grey near his temples, but the man looked absolutely stunning. 6 feet tall, wavy dark black hair that curled into the collar of his polo neck, dark brown eyes, and a smile that could disarm an entire platoon. Jai had always been, well, sexy. But this time around, there was something else that caught Shamita's attention. It wasn't his smile, not even his eyes. It was the light stubble that was grazing his jawline and chin. He looked more rakish now. The boyhood innocence had been replaced by a rugged masculinity. Her heart skipped a couple of beats. Shamita didn't realize that she was standing stock still until Geet cleared her throat loudly. I'm going to leave you to continue to stare at each other while I go and get ready for the engagement. Popeye." She turned and left. Now it was just the two of them. Shamita was still not able to say anything, but she made a mental note to kill Geet later. "Hey Mithi," Jai used the nickname he had given her. "Hey," she whispered in reply. "Can I come in?" Yeah, sure." The uncertainty in her heart echoed in her voice. She stepped aside to let him enter. Mithi, you might want to put some clothes on," Jai muttered. Shamita was immediately pulled out of her reverie. She wasn't even wearing any underwear, for God's sake. Yeah, okay." She shut the door in Jai's face. "Oh shit, I'm such an idiot." Shamita cursed herself as she rummaged through her suitcase to find something appropriate to wear. She quickly pulled on a grey top with yellow and pink flowers. She was about to pull on a pair of jeans when she realized she still hadn't worn any underwear. She got dressed, quickly removed the towel from her hair, and was running her fingers through her tangled curly hair even as she opened the door. Jai wasn't prepared for the onslaught of emotions that swept through him when he first laid eyes on Shamita. 12 years had passed since the last time he had seen her. They had gone from being best friends to strangers. Not only had they not kept in touch, but neither had even tried to reach out to the other at any point. It was as though both had wanted to forget each other. Like that would ever happen, he mentally snorted. In a white and lavender robe with a towel wrapped around her head, Shamita looked nothing like his best friend. In her place was this voluptuous and beautiful goddess with big almond-shaped eyes, thick long lashes, and a pink lush mouth, who had managed to render him speechless for close to 5 minutes. The slight parting of the lapels of her robe presented him with a small but tantalizing glimpse of her cleavage. Jai was stunned that his brain was entertaining such thoughts about the girl with whom he used to talk about other girls. Back in school, Shamita was just one of the boys. He could talk about anything and everything with her, and that was perhaps why she had been his best friend and not any other boy. It was Geet's snarky comment about them staring at each other while she prepared for other ceremonies That finally got him to open his mouth, and then, like a complete idiot, he had made feel all awkward and had deservedly had the door slammed in his face. He waited for a solemn 7 minutes before he decided to knock on her door. Just as he raised his fist, the door opened and there she stood, his Mithi. Her feet were bare and he could see her toenails had been painted a bright pink. She was running her fingers through her tangled hair. Jay's breath hitched. How on earth was he going to have a rational conversation with this woman without making an utter fool of himself? He knew not. He was shocked by this trail of thought. Previously, it had been so easy to talk to her, from problems in mathematics to pushing her to go and talk to a girl he liked. He had been able to tell her just about everything. But today he was hesitating. Why? Was it because she had changed? Or was it because he had? Or perhaps was it because neither had changed but were too afraid to admit it? Was she still his Mithi? Hi, she quipped, slightly breathless. Shamita was sure her face resembled a beetroot or else a tomato. She had never felt more shy or awkward in her life. And this was Jai, for God's sake. This was her best friend from school. Why was there any kind of awkwardness? Hey Mithi, how have you been? I'm well, Jai. Why don't you come in? She said a little too formally. She stepped aside, allowing him to enter her room. Thanks. He strolled in with his hands in his pockets. He stopped in the middle of the room, turned around, and simply stared at her. Okay, now, I'm definitely a beetroot. There was a rosewood lovers eating at the foot of the huge four-poster bed. She motioned for him to sit down there. Ladies first, he said and smiled softly. Shamita knew why. She had always hated that phrase when they were in school. She had never been able to understand the need to say something like that. According to her, it didn't uphold the principles of gender equality. She had always believed that by saying ladies first, the person who was saying it was in fact making it obvious that he believed that the lady was weaker and therefore needed special care. Shamita smiled now and said, Just sit down, Jai. He sat down and motioned for her to sit next to him. Awkward scene coming up. Shamita's heart was beating so fast and hard that she was sure Jai could hear it. She shook her head and said, No thanks. I have some unpacking to do. Would you mind if I did that now? Jai looked at her perplexed. Yeah, sure, go ahead. She started with the small suitcase and the travel bag. She lifted them off the table that sat right next to the dresser and put them on the bed. She knew that she was stretching the silence, but for the life of her, she didn't know what to say. She needed to figure out a way to strike up a conversation with her best friend, whom she hadn't seen in nearly 12 years. Were they still best friends? Jai watched Shamita as she moved about the room. She had always been graceful in her movements. He knew dance had always been her greatest passion, and yet he had never gone to see her perform, except for that one disastrous time. He was proud of all her accomplishments. He felt like they were his own, but he just wouldn't go to any of her performances. She had even asked him once about his weird behavior, and that was when they had a huge row. Why don't you ever come to my performances? She had innocently asked one evening. They had just finished celebrating her winning an award for her dance and had been sitting in the school hall doing their week's homework. Given that they were in the ninth grade, their teachers had piled them with homework and extra assignments already, preparing them for the next academic year. 10th grade meant board exams, and the teacher were anxious about the whole deal. I just don't understand all that, Mithi, he had replied, with as much nonchalance as he could muster. What is it that you don't understand, Jai? I just don't. The fact is, you're not interested. You really don't care about any of these things, Shamita had said and stalked off to her hostel block before he could say anything in his defense. Jai knew he had really hurt her, but he didn't know what to say to her. So he thought it is best to keep quiet and wait for her to come back and talk to him. Big mistake. Not only did Shamita not talk to him for a fortnight, she also went to Goa with Geet without telling him. Then one night, close to midnight, the warden of his dormitory woke him up saying there was a call for him. Groggily cursing whoever it was that was calling him at such an ungodly hour, Jai went to answer the phone call. The next 3 minutes were the worst of his life. A frantic Geet told him that Shamita had almost drowned at Candolim Beach. She had been rescued by a couple of boys and was admitted to the local hospital, but she hadn't regained consciousness. For the next few hours, Jai operated an autopilot. He rushed back to his dormitory, pulled out a bag from under his bed, and stuffed some clothes into it. He then removed his pillow from its case and took out a wad of notes. He had been saving up for a trip to Delhi for a literary feast, but right then he needed to get to Shamita. Nothing else mattered. On his way out, he quickly scribbled a note to the hostel warden, who had promptly gone back to sleep after waking him up, saying there had been emergency and he would be back in a couple of days. He knew he was going to be in a major trouble when he returned, but he would worry about that later. For most of his life, Jai had learned to defend for himself. His mother had taught him that. Most children his age would have found it difficult to make decisions, let alone follow through with them. But Jai was different, which is why in less than an hour he was on his way to Goa in a bus. By 10 o'clock the next morning, Jai was in the hospital room where Shamita had been admitted. His heart sank. She looked so small and fragile. Never before had he felt so helpless. He couldn't do anything to make her better, so instead he started talking to her. He told her about how sorry he was for not having been a good friend. He told her about how much he had missed her during the last couple of weeks, and finally he also told her about why he wouldn't come to any of her performances. The truth is, Mithi, he began softly, I do not like the idea of you dancing in front of so many people. I know how much you love your dance, but I cannot watch you dancing to an audience. And it isn't because I'm old-fashioned or anything of that sort. No, Mithi. I'm just selfish. I want you to dance only for me. To this day, Jai didn't know whether Shamita had actually heard him that morning in Goa. But that afternoon, she regained consciousness. The doctors had kept her under observation for one more night, and Jai had insisted on sleeping in the same room on the makeshift bed. The two of them had agreed that it would be pointless to inform her parents as she was much better now. The journey back to Mumbai was spent in awkward silence, with only Geet muttering every half an hour or so that she was never going to go with Shamita to a beach again. As Jai watched Shamita now, he realized just how much he had missed her this last decade. He had already moved to Cardiff when he had heard about her accident from Karan. He had just felt as helpless then. He wanted to call her and find out if she was all right, but for some reason he couldn't bring himself to do it. Over the years, through Karan, he had learned that she had studied art in Jaisalmer, Kolkata, and even in Tanjore before moving to Paris to pursue her masters. He was proud of the life she had carved out for herself. She had always been a terrific artist, and somewhere deep down he had been this niggling doubt that perhaps she was being pushed into dance by her parents. He wanted to know about her accident, but he didn't know how to broach the subject. But for now, he had to go. He didn't want to make his mother and sister wait at the airport. He'll get an earful from both of them. Getting to his feet, he said, Mithi, I need to leave now. I have to go pick up Amma and Naina from the airport. Oh wow, Naina is coming. How is she? She asked him excitedly and for the first time addressed him directly. Yes, she and Amma are coming. Naina likes to drive me up the wall every now and then, he smiled. This is fantastic. I haven't seen her in ages. I think the last time I saw her was when she and Lalita auntie had come to Mumbai for your 16th birthday, she said. Do you remember? We had gone to Leopold's. I know. We can all catch up anyway. I have got to go now. Otherwise, the two of them will collectively pull out all my hair. See you really soon. Say hi to Lalita auntie and Naina, she said. He nodded, a dazzling smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. Yes, Mithi. So let me know how did you feel this chapter, and soon I will post chapter 3 and we'll see how the Mithi and Jay story goes on.